Hi, Robin. I have a miracle story to share, and it's called Facing the Flood. It was a very, very stormy day, and there were floods all over town. And I had picked my son up from a practice or something from school, and we went to turn down the road, and I drove right into a flood. So I panicked, and my first instinct was, I just got to get through this. Like, I just need to get to the other side of this water. So I gunned it. And I have a sedan, so it's close to the ground, which meant gunning it meant that I flooded the engine. So we got halfway down the road, and my car just completely died. It wouldn't turn. The ignition, the ignition would turn. There was not a single sound. There wasn't, not a thing. And so, of course, my first instinct was, oh my gosh, what have I just done to this car? Do what's in front of you to do until you can get to peace, right? So I was like, okay, well, I have to call AAA because we have to get out of this flood. So I called AAA, and there were swarms of them around anyway because there was so much flooding. So the guy was like, don't worry, we'll be there. It won't be long. And so we're sitting there, my son and I. And then I thought, okay, well, now I know what to do. I'm going to choose peace. And I use that saying that I use, oh gosh, I don't even know how many times a day I use it. But it's I make a reservation for the highest, happiest, most remarkable, peaceful outcome. It doesn't matter what happened after that. I just knew I was going to have peace. Maybe the car would get through the flood. Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe it needed to be towed. Maybe it didn't. But it didn't matter because I just knew that it was peaceful and that I didn't even have to wait for the peace everything's already given us, right? So the peace was already within me, and it was just a matter of accessing it. We did sit there, and I was just, making a reservation. Also, there's only God. There's only the power of God. There's only the presence of God. God did not create flooding. God did not create cars to break down. Therefore, it is not real. If it has no real, it has no power. If it has no power, there's nothing to fear. How can you have fear after knowing that? So, and I was sitting, my son was with me, and we're just going through this. And then I had this notion in my head, which I know my father would tell us never to do, turn the ignition and I kept my foot pressed down on the gas pedal. Really, logically, you would think that would just continue to flood the engine, but that's what I did. All of a sudden, there's just a little sputter out of the engine. And I was like, okay, well, that's better than what we've had. So I did it again and again. And the next thing, the car started to sputter enough where it started to move. So very slowly, we just sputtered through the rest of the flood. And when I got to the other side of it, I called AAA, and I said, you don't have to come anymore. And then I called an auto shop right by us, and I said, can I bring my car in? I've just flooded the engine, and it's sputtering. I can drive it there, but I don't know what's going to happen, if it's going to run again or whatever. And the guy said, you're so lucky you got it started. He said, but what you need to do now is just to keep driving so that you can dry the engine out. Because he said, if you bring it to me and we shut this car off, it's going to be a massive job for me to dry out the engine. He said, I will literally have to take your engine apart and dry it out, and you don't want to have to do that. So we did. We drove, and about a half hour later, the car just kicked into normal rhythm, and we drove, and then we drove it home, and it's been driving ever since. So that was just such a miracle to me, and not just a miracle because the car was perfectly fine, and we got home, and it didn't need service, and it didn't need to be towed or any of that, but just perfect because it proves that, well, we're all entitled to miracles. I'm not any different than anybody else. Also, when you can get your mind to that place where, why not you? Why not me? So I don't know. It was, and just choosing peace was inevitable. It was just a huge validation to me that I can choose peace anytime I want it, even in the middle of a flood where I could have easily, ruined our car. That could have been the end of it. So that's my story.
Hi, Robin. This is Lynn, and thank you so much for inviting me to share my miracle story today. And I am calling it the fear of flying. So to give you a little background about this, many years ago, I had a job required me to travel frequently, several flights a week, for about 4 years, and I really enjoyed it. I loved to fly. I loved the whole experience. I loved it when the flights were bumpy and it would let me go into a nice, lovely nap. And I enjoyed it. But somewhere along the line, definitely after I became a mother, I developed this really intense fear of flying. And it got worse and worse every time I got on a plane. So I started to look for all sorts of ways to avoid having to get on a plane. And I feel like it felt worse to me because I remembered a time when I enjoyed it. And here I just would be almost just riddled with anxiety for the entire flight. So when I did have to fly, I tried all sorts of relaxation techniques. I tried meditating during the flight. I tried tapping during the flight, and they helped a little bit. But deep down, I just still had this deep fear every time I got on a plane. And I had mentioned it to my doctor, who suggested I take medication when I fly, but I knew that that wasn't the solution to my problem, so I turned it down. I kept it in the back of my mind, but I really wanted to find an answer. I wanted to solve this. I didn't want to put a Band-Aid on it. So in April of 2019, I had what was probably my most fearful experience. Nothing happened. It was a perfectly normal flight, but I was just gripped with so much fear the entire time that I told myself, next flight, I'm taking the medicine. I don't care. I can't do this again. But then as life would have it, I just didn't have any opportunity to fly the rest of 2019. And all my travel in 2020 was canceled because of the pandemic. So now it had been well over a year and I hadn't been on a plane until about a month ago. What happened was I felt completely guided to go and visit an old friend of mine. And I say guided because it definitely wasn't something I thought about or planned. It was just this intense urge. I needed to go and see her. I called her. I booked the flight without planning, without thinking, and that was it. And I literally forgot that I was afraid to fly. Like, I didn't even remember it. I just went to the airport. Now, one thing that had changed in my life between that 2019 flight and this is that I started to get very serious about studying A Course in Miracles. I had sort of picked it up and put it down many times for years, but over this past 6 months, I've become very serious about applying the lessons every single day. And I've started to notice all kinds of amazing shifts in my life, but it never occurred to me that it might affect my fear of flying. So I showed up at the airport. I would have thought I would have been a little nervous just because I'm now flying during a pandemic, but it didn't even occur to me to be afraid. I went through security, I boarded the plane, I sat down, and then when I buckled my seatbelt, it was like this jarring motion, and I remembered I was afraid. Everything came rushing back to me, but I feel like this time I knew what to do, and I just closed my eyes, and I took a deep breath, and I pulled up, I don't know the lesson number, but I remember exactly what it says, there is nothing to fear. And I repeated that to myself several times, and I just let all of my fear, I just let it go, and I just sent it up to the Holy Spirit, and I asked him to just take it away. And then I just felt overcome by a wonderful sense of peace. And this whole thing took just a few seconds. This wasn't a long period of time. I opened back my eyes, and the whole rest of the flight was completely pleasant. It was peaceful. It was delightful. I remember looking out the window as the sun was rising, as we were about to land, and looking down at all the houses and the roads and just kind of seeing it from a different perspective. And I felt almost a sense of bliss about the whole experience. And I just know that that is gone from me forever. I know that I gave that up, and I don't need that anymore, and I'm not afraid to fly. And that is my miracle story. And I share that today because I know there are a lot of people out there with a lot of fears. Flying is a pretty common one. And so I just wanted to remind people to expect a miracle. It can totally happen.
Hi, Robin. I have a miracle story to share. I call it the van story. Now, this occurred many years ago before I knew you. It was back in the early 90s, and I still lived in northern Ohio in my previous marriage and family and kids. I had a van And I want to describe the van to you because it actually plays a role, helps to better understand the story a little more. It was a Dodge Ram van, pretty big van, and it had the captain's chairs in the front and a bench row seat in the back, and the back seat could fold down into a bed. The back of the van had these French doors that would open up, and then on top of those French doors was the spare tire and also a ladder that went up to the roof. And then on the side of the van had these also cargo doors that would open so you could take the seats in and out or put something in there larger. So in having this van, we the family drove everywhere in this van. We had horses at the time. I think we had about 10 Tennessee walking horses, and the kids were riding. And we would go down into Kentucky and take horses with us down there and transport them. So that was a lot of mileage. Did a couple of trips out west to Idaho and Arizona, and then back to Ohio again. Made that trip, I think, at least twice. So put a lot of miles on this van, and it did a really good job. It was a leased van through a leasing company, and it got to a point where it was about 4 months before the van was due to be turned back in. And so I contacted the van company and told them, hey, I'm about ready to turn this back in. And they asked me a question. They said, how many miles are on the van? And I thought, miles on the van. So I told them, I don't remember exactly how many it was. And they said, oh, well, that's a lot of miles. You had an annual limit on the amount of miles that you could put on this van. And after I told them the mileage, they calculated it out and said that I owed $6,800. And I thought, wow, right now in life, that's a lot. And we had a lot of expenses with the horses and the house and a lot of other things going on. And so $6,800 was really hard to come by. I definitely didn't have it. And so I thought, I've got 4 months, $6,800 I need to come up with. And hey, I can come up with this. And when I say that, I just want to give you a sense of my thought process at the time. I had a college degree, so hey, I can come up with $6,800. I worked for a large corporation, and I designed computer automation design systems to control energy-consuming equipment in 500,000 square foot manufacturing plants and multi-story office buildings. So I can figure out how to come up with $6,800. And as far as dealing with adversity in that kind of a challenge, and the kind of things that goes through one's mind to come up with a solution. I was in high school on my wrestling team. In fact, I was captain of the wrestling team. And in fact, one particular match, I was going to have to go up against a guy that was probably a lot better than me and had been known by many, and a lot of people attended the match to watch what was going to happen. And so this guy's name also was Hercules. So that's even a little bit more intimidating if people know the Greek gods, myths, and of Hercules, supposed to be a pretty strong guy. And so it came time for the match, and I just decided I'm going to beat this guy. And so I went out on the mat and I won. And everybody was surprised and overwhelmed by it, but I just decided I was going to do it. So, hey, I come up with $6,800. And just a further example of my mindset, I was also a high school football star. And so one of the teams I was on was a kickoff team where they kick the ball and you run down the field and tackle the guy that gets the ball. Well, I was out on the end of all the guys lined up to run down. So I'm running down the field at the first kickoff of the game, just at the start of it. And as I'm running, another opposing player fell in front of me. So I had to hurdle over him. So as I'm hurdling over him, I come down on my left foot and all my weight is on my left leg as you land. And as I did that exact moment, another opposing player comes in from the side to block me, and he dives at me in a spearing kind of fashion where his helmet goes first, and it went right into the side of my left knee. And I fell to the ground, and as I'm on the ground trying to get up, I realize my knee hurts and I can't get up. So I look at my knee, and normally your leg would be straight. And what I didn't know is that this guy had dislocated my leg at the knee joint. And instead of it going straight out, from my knee down, it went out over at an angle. And I'm sitting there on the ground, and I immediately, my mind went into fast thought going, oh my gosh, I guess I'm hurt. And if I don't correct this or fix it, if I say I'm hurt, no one knew at the time, then they're going to take me off the field, take me out of the game. Well, that was unacceptable because especially in those days, sports was a guy's life. I mean, that was everything. So if I couldn't play, I lost my identity. And so I quickly thought, don't tell anybody about this. And my quick solution was, I simply reached down and grabbed my leg and put it back in place. And once I did that, I jumped up, ran off to the side of the field, didn't tell anybody, and played the whole rest of the game. Well, the rest of the weekend after that, my knee swelled up twice its size, but it eventually went back down. I was able to play again the next week and go on and complete the rest of the season. In fact, later that season, after that was wrestling when I wrestled Hercules. So, and also Hercules, if you're out there, you ever hear this story, hope you're doing well, buddy. So, hey, adversity, toughness, technicalities, and things of that nature, I can figure out a way to come up with $6,800. I've got 4 months to do it. So I started and I thought, okay, can I get a loan? Nah, finances aren't good enough then. Can I borrow the money from somebody? No, I didn't really know anybody to be able to do that. How about working extra hard and getting more income from work? That wasn't possible. Come up with some new way to generate income. That wasn't possible. Sell something. That wasn't possible. I just kept going through item after item after item, thought after thought to try to come up with this. And the clock was ticking. 1 month went by, 2 months went by, 3 months went by, still had no solution to this problem. And I'm thinking, come on, you could come up with this. And you know, when you think of everything you can think of, and with my background as I described, now it's time to dig deeper, work harder, think more, throw more ideas at the wall, try to figure out something to come up with this $6,800. Well, it got to a point where it was 48 hours before the van was due to be turned in. And I had nothing. I was empty, no ideas at all, no way to come up with this. And so it was getting to be late in the evening, got 48 hours left. Since I was going to lose the van in 48 hours, I had this big air compressor out in the garage, 300-pound air compressor on wheels. And I had to move it from the house to another location, a storage unit. And the only way I could do that was with the van. So I loaded it into the van earlier in the day, and I'd planned later that night to move it to the storage unit. And so I got into the house, and by this time it was about 10 o'clock at night, and everybody was asleep in the house. And so I just sat there thinking I wasn't able to come up with a solution to this problem. I still owe the $6,800. And it was at that point, I wasn't very religious at the time. I certainly wasn't spiritual. I didn't pray very much at all. I knew of A Course in Miracles a little. I had read a little information, but I didn't really have that as my go-to whenever you have problems like this. And I was out of ideas. My mind was empty. I had no solutions I could think of. And it was at that time that I thought, maybe you should pray about this and ask for help. That was one of the things that the Course that I at least remembered so far that I had learned from what I looked at is that ask God for help and then get quiet and listen. So I did that, and I did pray. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I did ask for guidance and help. And I really just emptied my mind at the moment and listened. And so as I said again, everybody was asleep in the house, so I was there by myself downstairs. And where I had to drive to drop off this air compressor was about 5 miles up the interstate highway. And so as I sat there, I didn't really get any kind of a message. What I got was a feeling. And the feeling said, don't take the compressor to where you're going to take it to yet. Just sit and wait. I felt like I was just supposed to wait. And I didn't know why or what for, but I just followed the guidance. And I just sat there. I didn't know how long I was supposed to sit there. I just felt like I was supposed to wait and not leave yet. It was probably about 30 minutes that went by. And then I finally felt like I should leave. It's just time to go get in the van and go. It just felt like I was ready to go and I was supposed to go right then. So I went outside, I got in the van, I drove up to the interstate, and it was all dark. There was no traffic on the interstate at all. And so it was really quiet. And I drove down the entrance ramp to the interstate. The speed limit was 55 miles per hour. And it's at night, and again, there's no traffic on the highway at all. So I get out onto the interstate. I'm only out there for a few seconds, and all of a sudden, I feel in the back of the van what sounded like an explosion, and the van gets launched forward, and I was so shocked that it threw me back in the captain's chair, and my arms were locked onto the steering wheel, and I just yelled out loud like, ah! I had no clue what was happening, and I thought, did an airplane hit the car? What happened? Because there was nothing there on the highway when I pulled out. And just at that moment, I realized also I had lost control of the van and I couldn't accelerate anymore, and it was coasting down the highway, which was a downgrade. And so I just had the wherewithal that I glanced in my side mirror on the driver's side, and I saw behind me the dark silhouette of another car drifting sideways off the highway. And I thought, oh my God, somebody ran into the back of me. How could that happen? Because there was nobody there. Where did this car come from? And so the van kept drifting down the highway. It was probably a quarter mile to a third of the mile down the highway. And I just slowly drifted it off the interstate until it stopped because the brakes didn't work either. I continued to look through my side mirror up at the highway behind me where I thought that car still was because you couldn't see it. And I saw other headlights coming down the highway and swerving and stopping. And I thought, oh man, this car must be in the highway. Is the driver lying out on the highway somewhere? And so I got out of my van and I was kind of dazed from the impact. And I saw more and more cars coming down and stopping and all their headlights on the highway stopping. I was still somewhat dazed. And I guess somebody made a quick phone call because now I could also see a fire truck and police cars coming from the local town out onto the highway, down the ramp, down to where this vehicle was. And I thought, oh boy, somebody's really hurt. And I couldn't drive back up there. And I thought, I need to get back up there because they're not going to have a clue what happened, let alone know anything about me and the impact. And so I gradually walked back up there. And by this time, there was a big crowd around a vehicle that was in the middle of the road. And the police cars and the firemen and ambulances are all there. I walked up to one of the firemen there. And at that time, I could see there was a car, and a policeman at the time was opening the car door of the driver's side and pulling the passenger out. And also, as they did that, some empty beer cans fell out onto the highway and started rolling away. And the person appeared to be alive, and they took them out and put them in a stretcher. And I tapped the shoulder of the fireman, and I told him who I was and what I thought happened, that apparently this car ran into the back of me, and my van was down the highway and broken down, and I just staggered back here. And the fireman was like, oh my gosh, are you hurt? And he called the paramedics over, and they're starting to check me out. And amazingly, I wasn't hurt at all. And being thrown back into the captain's chair, it was like it cradled me and just caught me and protected me. And the fact that my arms were kind of locked forward, that also just kept me from flying forward and hitting the steering wheel or getting knocked out of the car. And so I just told him, hey, I'm okay, I'm okay. And so after that, a lot of things happened. They checked me out. The firemen went down to the van and evaluated that. And they eventually came back and talked with me. And they said, well, first of all, it looks like your van it's probably totaled. It can't be driven. And we want to tell you what we think happened at the time of impact. First of all, well, this is later on, but what they were actually able to determine later on in finding out what occurred is that this car had been driving down the highway. Again, I was going 55 miles an hour. This car was doing over 100, and it was a drunk driver, a woman, and she was driving with her headlights off. So that's why I never saw her. And so she just slammed into the back of me. And again, the reason why I told you how this van was put together, the fireman told me that the impact of the vehicle behind me collapsed the spare tire and the ladder that was on the back of the van, and also the doors in the back of the van. And so that absorbed some of the impact, because they told me that high-speed impact should have caused me to lose control and go off the highway. There was actually a cliff off the side of the highway that I was lucky that I didn't go that way. And so that was part of what absorbed the impact of the vehicle. The other thing they told me is that the 300-pound compressor that was inside the van had flipped over. And so that totally absorbed the shock also of the vehicle impacting me and made it less harsh on my vehicle. And so I was like, oh my gosh, wow. So they towed the van away, and they towed the woman's car away, and they took her to the hospital, and they gave me a ride home because I didn't need to go and get evaluated. I was okay. So the next day, after I explained this whole scenario to the family, I thought, I need to go up to where the van is and the car is, which I guess they took it to a garage in the local town. And so I was able to find out where that was. And I went there, and I saw my vehicle, and it looked pretty bad. And I saw the other vehicle, and my biggest concern at the time was, how was the driver of the other car? What had happened to this woman? Was she okay? And so I looked into the vehicle that she was driving, and I saw a bunch of mail that was strewn all over the car. And I could see on the mail a name and an address. And I wrote the name and address down, and I looked it up in the phone book. Back then, we still had phone books. And I made a phone call to what I thought was the person's name and address. And a woman answered that sounded older than the woman that was in the car. The woman in the car looked like maybe she was 35, something like that. And this was an older sounding woman. And I asked, "Are you so-and-so?" And she said, "No, that's my daughter." And I said, "Oh, well, I'm the person that was involved in the accident last night. And I was calling to find out how she is." And the woman told me that she is her mom and that she was in the hospital. She was going to be okay. She did have to have some eye surgery for lacerations around her eye, but overall she would be all right. But that the impact terrified her, and that she had had a drinking problem for many, many years, and they had been trying to get her help and get her to stop drinking, and they weren't successful. And that this car crash scared her so bad that she declared she was going to stop drinking and that she was going to get help. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And as I got off the phone, I thought that must be why this happened, so that I could help this person, be an instrument to help this person to get help from themselves and solve their alcohol problem and get back to a normal life. And I thought, that's great. I feel good about that. I can deal with this. And then I also got told that the van is totaled. And it instantly clicked into my mind, wait a minute, how can the van be totaled? I have to turn it in. I owe $6,800 on this van. What am I going to do? And so it was at that moment, well, not exactly at that moment, but a little bit later in the day, I talked to the van company, and they said, sorry about what happened to the van, but you still owe the $6,800. And I got off the phone, and I still felt okay about it, though. Like I didn't go into panic or fear. And I only had 24 hours left before I had to come up with the $6,800. But I just felt so peaceful, because it felt like I was in some kind of mode where things that were happening were supposed to happen. And I thought, if it helps somebody to break the problem of alcoholism, that's okay. If I really get burned on the $1,600, that's okay, because I feel like something good came from it. So it was shortly after that that I got a call from my insurance company. And they said, hey, the van's totaled. And I said, yeah, I know. And they said, well, we have a check for you for $7,200. And I was speechless. I thought, $7,200. I owe $6,800. I'm being given $7,200. The problem is solved, and I get $400 left over. I was like, wow, that is so amazing. I was just dumbfounded with it. But again, also, it felt like that is so fascinating. God did this. And like I said, at the time, I didn't have a lot of experience at praying, asking for guidance and listening, which are some of the basic principles that the Course teaches. And I've since learned that over and over and over again with so many other miracle stories that have happened in my life since then, that most truly it's a function of, and I know we all want to initially go to, I can solve this, I can figure it out. Well, I thought I could, but I couldn't. I asked for guidance and I listened. And again, that's what the Course teaches. And I've since done that so many times. And in the mindset of, I can figure this out, I can solve this. Yeah, here, to come up with that plan, like if I was sitting with my best friend and I thought, well, here's my plan, here's how I'm going to come up with $1,600. I'm going to wait until 10 o'clock at night. I'm going to pull out on the interstate in the dark when there's no other vehicles and time it perfectly to get in front of a car that's going twice my speed. The person's going to be drunk. Their headlights are going to be off. They're going to run into me. I won't get killed. They won't get killed. But I'll end up getting enough money to pay off the van. They're going to look at me like, yeah, right. Sure, that's going to happen. Good luck with that one, Terry. That is, in fact, what happened. And I've since so learned that miracles come in ways that we could never expect. We could never design or plan. They come out of nowhere, and they have such intricacy and such detail, and they're executed in such a way that the greatest supercomputer couldn't have figured it out, let alone orchestrate it and make it actually happen. And so I just want to share that story of what I've learned from that and what I've since learned time and time and time again, that is truly what the Course teaches us, and I'm so thankful for it. I'm thankful to be here and be able to share this story with you, and remember to expect miracles.
Hi, Robin. I have a miracle story, and it's called Getting What I Wanted. So I was working at full-time as a teacher's assistant in a school, and it came to the end of the year, and I was thinking, I would really love part-time for next year because I really wanted to spend time working on this middle grade book that I've been wanting to get out. I talked it out with my husband and we decided, yeah, I would go part-time. And if they didn't offer part-time, then I would just resign and hope that something else came back around. So I asked the principal if she had anything part-time, and part-time is very hard to come by. Anybody who has part-time doesn't give it up. And it's also hard to get back into the district once you leave. So I prayed about it. Again, I made my reservation for peace, and I went for the happy outcome. Again, not a happy outcome so that I necessarily got exactly what I wanted, but a happy outcome in knowing that whatever I got and whatever showed up was going to be happy, and that I had to trust that. And that I had also learned to celebrate everything that happened as a step towards my happiness. I had a very peaceful mind about it. And I asked the principal, did she have 2 or 3 days as opposed to 5 days? And she said, no. She said, we don't. But if anything comes out, I will keep you in mind. And I said, okay. So then I called the district because I was thinking that maybe another school in the district needed somebody part-time. So I called the human resource person and I asked her if there were any part-time positions in the district. And she said, no, there isn't. But if something comes up, I'll keep you in mind. And she said, but if you are going to resign, we need your letter of resignation so that we know that we have your position to fill. So I said, that's fine. I said, I will call you tomorrow. So here I was. They didn't have a part-time position, but I wasn't flustered. I wasn't worried. I was just like, this is one more step towards my happiness. And whatever happens here is going to be happy because I already chose peace. And so I was happy. Like I was happy. And then 3 hours later, my phone rings and I answer it. And it was the woman from the district. And she said, we just got a job for 2 days a week at one of the schools in the district. Do you want that? And I was like, yes, I want that. That's perfect. And it was perfect. I've been there since. It gives me my 3 days to do what I really want to work on. The people are lovely. The kids are terrific. And it's been a really great experience. And it was also validation that I didn't know what the happy outcome was. I just needed to go for the happy outcome. And I needed to do it without thinking that I had to manipulate or plan or make something happen for myself. I just had to trust. And that's something I really learned about miracles is that it's not trusting in that you get what you want, but it's having conviction in God's will for your happiness. And then when you can settle on that idea, you don't worry and you don't care about if it's what you think it is. You just know, you just plan on happy. And so that was a really great experience.
Hi, everyone. This is Robin Duncan, and I hope you have been enjoying those miracle stories as much as I have. Today, I'd like to finish off this segment with one of my own personal miracle stories. You know, about 10 years ago, one of my dearest friends, Marta, she passed away from stage 4 lung cancer. And it was a very difficult final stage of her life. And I remember being right there at her bedside, just kneeling down next to it as she was taking her last few breaths of life. And she was under the oxygen mask. And I will never forget because I was just devastated watching all this happen in front of me. And she was saying these words, and I said, what? Because I couldn't quite hear her. She was under the oxygen mask. And she was saying, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. And I just wept as I heard her say those words because I was thinking, how can you be grateful? You're under oxygen. You're dying of stage 4 lung cancer. And she said, I am so at peace and I'm so grateful. So now here I go. Anyway, she was thanking me for the help I had provided. But of course, I felt like I failed her because she was passing away. And ultimately, she did pass away that evening. And I felt like the message back to me was that she was entirely at peace and that her spirit was actually too big for the body that she had once inhabited and that this was the right thing that needed to occur. Well, it was still hard for me to accept, of course, because we miss our friends, don't we? Even though they don't die, they're all around us. But when we can't see them, it's challenging. And I know how that feels. And my heart was just hurting. And her husband, he was grieving, and I was trying to comfort him. And I said, I'd be happy to do a service for her because I do officiate these kinds of things from time to time. And he was so excited about that. And so we agreed that I would do that. And then I went ahead and went on home. And as soon as I got home, I received a phone call. And the phone call was that my father had passed away. Wow. I will never, ever forget that day. And I definitely broke down. And it was just like a double punch. Really, really hard. For those of us who are left here and we can't see our loved ones anymore, it's just so challenging. And so I just remember that day, and I went straight to God, and I didn't know what to do with my grief. It was just so much all at once. So ultimately, in the next couple of days, the service that I had promised was coming up. It was the following Sunday, and all of this had happened on Friday. So all of a sudden, there's this service that I had promised, and I was really still very much consumed in my own sadness and grief. And I felt very much at peace that the two of them were happy. I knew that they were, but I was still processing my own emotions about it. And my friend's husband called and said, "Are you ready to do the service?" And of course I wasn't, but I said, I'm going to be ready. I will be ready. And I knew that I would, but it was hard to even say those words because I was just in the middle of my own grief. So Sunday rolls around. And when I got up that morning, I thought, I can't do this. I just can't do this. And I wanted to because I love my friend so much, but I had no energy. I couldn't even hardly get myself out of bed. And I went straight to God, as I know to do. And I said, "God, I just need your help today. Will you breathe life into me? I want to be present for my friend. I want to be present for my family as we're all going through this time. But I don't know that I have it in me." See, I'm starting to tear up again. I don't know that I have it in me, but I really want to do this, but I'm going to need your help all day. So first thing that happens is I start to get the idea that I need to put together some kind of little memorial handout, the little pamphlet about my friend, and I'm trying to pull my thoughts together, and I start looking for just a little picture to put with her picture on the little leaflet, and I find this beautiful dragonfly. And it's a little piece of clip art, but it was just so pretty. And my friend, for those of you that know Marta, she's just bigger than life. She has this hair of like a lion's mane, and she's just so amazing. And this dragonfly was turquoise and like a bright golden orange, and it was just fiery, and it felt like her. So I really thought this is a great picture to put with her on her little memorial. And so that was great. And I felt excited about that I had something that I could make it really pretty for the handout. Next thing is I get a phone call that says that there's going to be 200 people showing up at my house. And I thought, oh my God, 200 people, it wasn't that we were going to have a big meal or anything, but, I had a pretty large home and we were on about an acre or so, acre and a half. And so we could accommodate 200 people. But again, you remember I was a little low on fuel that day. So the thought of entertaining 200 people was a little challenging, or accommodating, I would say, not entertaining. But so that was the next phone call. And then I started to think more that, I actually need something to wear, and I couldn't think of anything that made sense or looked right for this kind of event that we were about to have. And so I went back to God. I said, "God, I need something to wear. What will I do?" And I got this picture of a white dress I had seen. It was down on Newport Beach Peninsula. They call it Balboa Peninsula, a little dress shop there. And it was about 25 minutes from our house. So this was a lot to do on a Sunday when I need to be ready. I think it was around 4 o'clock or something, but it was going to take some time if I was going to go all the way down there and all the way back to try to find this dress. But I felt really compelled that it was the right thing to do. And I asked my husband, can we drive down there real quick? And he, of course, everything we need, he just hops right to it. And so we drove down there. We get to the dress shop and I see the white dress and I try on the white dress and it didn't fit at all. It just looked terrible. And then I started to doubt myself. I thought, wow, I'm so tired. I must not have heard the instructions. And then I thought, wow, I wasted this time. I could have used this time preparing. And that voice, we know that voice, right? So I paused and I felt like the message was, stop. I brought you here for a reason. You asked me. So pay attention and pause. And so I walked around the dress shop and I was really feeling a little defeated because there was nothing else there that would even begin to work. And then I just started to feel this idea come through that said, walk down the sidewalk a little bit. And I asked my husband, let's head on down the sidewalk there. So we did, and we passed a t-shirt shop, and it's like, well, that doesn't look like much. And then we went to another shop that looked like a sweatshirt kind of shop, and I thought, okay, well, that doesn't really fit. And then we kept on walking, and then finally on the last store on this little sidewalk area, there was a dress in the window, and it was perfect. It was kind of a cream base. It was long. It had a nice V-neck, had beautiful sleeves that come off the shoulders. It was so pretty and so appropriate. And it was, amazingly, it was turquoise and burnt orange and gold, and it had this cream base. And I thought, wow, it kind of matches the little memorial program, you know? And I just almost wept looking at it. I knew it would fit. It was perfect. It wasn't expensive. It was just wonderful. So I walk in, I try on the dress, and it was perfect. And then I thought, well, it has this little V-neck. Maybe I could use a little necklace to go with it. And they had a wall of jewelry there. And I turn around, and the first thing I see is a dragonfly. It's a beautiful dragonfly, and you can already guess what colors it was: turquoise and burnt orange and a little bit of gold. And I just started crying. I thought, oh, God, you are so good. You are amazing. And I know this is just about a dress and a necklace, but I needed help that day. I was helped. It was perfect. And I was so excited, and it felt like it was representative of her. That's what I needed to accomplish, was something that would be beautiful for her. So today, I honor you, Marta. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to do that service. And I know that I had several friends come up to me and they said, did you lighten your hair? And I said, no. And they said, you're glowing. We don't know what it is, but you are just glowing. And I thought that was interesting. But I thought, wow, I feel like I'm flooded with the fire of the Holy Spirit, because I was so alert in that ceremony, in that service, in that celebration of life. I was so alert. My mind was crisp and clear. I felt like I was taller. It just was wonderful. So I guess my message in all of this, in this celebration of life, is that when you need help, call on God, ask for help, be willing to receive that help. Trust the guidance that you receive. Sometimes we get a little signal of something we understand that's going to lead us to something that we haven't seen before. You see, if Holy Spirit had given me the picture of the dress I ended up with, I wouldn't have recognized it. Or even the storefront. I didn't really know the storefront that well. So notice how it came to me. It came to me with something I knew that led me to something I didn't know. So be patient with your guidance. When you are asking for guidance, be sure to let it in. Leave room for it. Pause, quiet your mind. Even if you're in a very grief-stricken state like I was, the Holy Spirit can still get through. You know, I don't get images very much. I usually get thoughts or a feeling or a strong, compelling kind of thing. But this time it was that picture of that white dress, and I knew it right away, and it led me to the right place. So I wish you all the very best of this year, and I hope you've been enjoying this A Course in Miracles TV show. I have had so much fun putting it together and meeting some of these wonderful teachers of A Course in Miracles. And we look forward to many more episodes. And we are here to shine the light, all of us, and we share it with one another. And today, dear God, I just ask that you bless everyone listening and everyone beyond. We thank you for all the blessings and miracles that you have given. We open our minds and hearts to receive your blessings, to know your love, to stand up for you in the face of our own ego, to be an ally of God. Thank you in advance for the highest, happiest, most remarkable experience of life. Our goal is peace, and we have learned that peace is all-inclusive. And we receive this blessing together. Amen. And remember to expect miracles.